let me tell you the experiences of a layman. All these guys are gurus in the sector, practitioners, and I fortunately am an idiot and a complete novice, completely non-technical, not even an engineer. And I was somehow put in charge of a subcommittee advising the earlier Minister for Power, again by default, and I was in charge of the subcommittee on transmission. So the first thing I tried to do was try to figure out what do you mean by transmission and what exactly is the problem. So I first understood the word transmission needs to be reduced into 2-3 different compartments, and the experts are going to speak on it, so I'm not going to take too much time. But the challenge was as follows. Everyone is very excited about Electricity Act 2003. The Electricity Act 2003 de-licensed generation. Very good. We like liberalization, de-licensing. Now, what used to happen between 1948 and 2003 is the CEA used to be the repository of all knowledge, and they had the data where the generating plant is coming, where is the mine. They used to give the techno-economic clearance. They used to know where the transmission line has to go from point A to point B. So they knew what is happening, and so the planning was done at the CA level. Last year when we started looking at the issue, we figured out the problem is rather complicated, because the CA is no longer being consulted or told or kept in the loop, so to speak, as to what is the status of the generating asset. So the result is that generation plants have come up and there is no transmission capacity. In some cases, there is transmission lines built, but the generator couldn't come up. In some cases, there is a beautiful line, which is a highway, high transmission corridor, but the state is not able to offtake the power. In some cases, we found that the states didn't have the funds to anticipate load, etc., etc. So the first thing we did as IPPAI is we organized meetings, series of meetings across the country, or from people across the country, and started asking the state load dispatch centers and the state transmission utilities as to what the issue was. And what were their points of view had to be taken on board, because I was a complete novice, and so I approached it from zero level. And to my pleasant surprise, I found the participation level from the engineers very proactive and very educative. And it began to show me how disconnected the whole process is. You see, in generation, you can always blame the Ministry of Coal, or you can say there is no fuel, or you can pass it on to somebody else. But transmission is all under one ministry, it's under one head, so to speak. So you can't pass the blame on to ABC. Then we found a very fascinating thing, that transmission is the best business to be in, because it is safe. And any bank is willing to finance you if you can get a license for building a transmission line. Then we found that unlike the internet or the telecom sector, I can't plug and play into the grid here, which means that I can't inject power from anywhere I want and draw power wherever I want in the country, because there are transmission constraints. So the engineers and we idiots, as I like to call us, consumers stroke non-knowers, were at loggerheads for the first 5-6 meetings. They said, yeah, you are talking nonsense. What is this plug and play grid? Where is this plug and play grid coming from? I said, boss, I'm a consumer. I'm an idiot. I'm used to internet. I just go to a Wi-Fi place, I pay for the grid that I use, the time I use, and I walk away. Why can't I have power like that? I can have mobile phones I can use anywhere in the country. It doesn't matter who the transmission, the carrier is, Airtel or Vodafone. I don't want to know. I'm not interested. All I want to know is I can do it. Then they explained to me it's technically not possible. Then I said, why? And we scratched our head. Finally, we came up with a very simple idea. In fact, it was so simple that it sounds absurd that we had to do all this to go to that. I said, Delhi has 2 ring roads, inner ring road and outer ring road. Did you build those ring roads to say first find out how many cars will go on it, who will be the driver, which will be light, which will be heavy vehicle, how many motorcycles, how much will they pay, then I'll build the road? No. You first build the road. So therefore, the concept of transmission being built after the plan is approved for generation and load had one fatal flaw in it. In the evolution of the market, it was fine in the beginning. In the early years of development of the power sector, you had a generating point and you had Delhi as a load, or you had Bombay as a load, or you had Calcutta or whichever city as a load. Then a very interesting thing happened. The Tata power plant started supplying power from the ultra mega project to Rajasthan. And I am quoting to you newspaper reports. I am not an expert. I have no inside knowledge. One very funny thing happened. The Rajasthan guys didn't pay. So Tatas went to the National Load Dispatch Center, to our guru there, and said, okay, sir, we want to disconnect the power supply to Rajasthan and supply it to some other state. So National Load Dispatch Center did 2 things. One, it gave them a cup of tea and showed them the door. And they said that if you want that, then you please bring Rajasthan also to come and tell us that they don't want this power, and we'll then allow you to sell to whoever you want. For me, it sent me 2 messages. If I'm setting up an ultra mega power project, putting in private money, and I'm supplying to a distribution company under a long-term contract, and if he doesn't pay me, I have no alternative. I can't sell it to anybody else. Unless the same distribution company which is not paying me also gives an NOC that he doesn't want my power, which is not likely to happen. Second, if by mistake, by default, God forbid, NLDC had allowed Tata Power to disconnect the power from Rajasthan, they would have lost their corridor, their long-term booked corridor forever. And they would have to stand in line behind short-term power. So we began to realize the enormity of the problem. What had actually happened is the market has shifted. Demand has shifted. Bits and pieces of the Electricity Act have come and kicked into place. But the problem that is coming up is the design or the regulations or the architecture of generation to load did not take now into account and had to now in fact take into account not only generation to load but to move power from load to load. So I want the ability, for example, Gopal should have the ability to transfer extra power from Delhi to Bombay, but he has no such ability. There is no corridor. Another aspect on a slightly different note which is connected is this business of merchant power plants versus IPPAI. Now, power is regulated and there is a movement, I don't know the latest status on it, but if you have got a coal mine, then that coal mine is only available to you provided you sign up a long-term contract with a distribution company. Now, Ravinder is here, and he was at that time chairman CEA. We were kind enough to collect some data, and we found that states like, for example, Punjab has a long-term demand, assessed demand, for which it pays money for 3,000 megawatts. But it has drawn up to 7,000 megawatts without paying for the transmission asset. So there again we found anomalies with regard to what you are saying and what you are doing. And why was Punjab doing this? Because Punjab has a seasonal requirement of power. So we were now faced with this new problem that how do you go forward? You don't know where the generation is coming, you don't know where the load is coming. The Regulatory Commission apparently, I don't know how far it's true, Mr. Verma is here, he's the technical man in CRC in charge, that CRC says we will not allow you to build merchant lines just like that or something like that, and I'm sure it will get clarified in this session. So how do you go forward? And the ministry kept asking me, kya ho raha hai bhai? IPPAI is supposed to give us suggestions. And I said, where do I start? Where do I go? So the concept of ring roads was fine. Then we started working on refining it. It came across a very interesting example. Ajay, your company, Sterlite. Sterlite has a captive power plant of 2,500 megawatts. It has connectivity to the grid, but it can't schedule all that power out on a guaranteed basis because it has no long-term commitment from power grid to evacuate that power. It may send out 600, 500, 400, 300, 1,000 depending on availability of the capacity. And similarly we found in Chhattisgarh, particularly in western Orissa or northwestern Orissa, what was called W3, famously called the W3 virtual gate created by the NLDC, almost 8,000 megawatts of capacity got stranded. There is power plant, there is fuel, people are willing to buy the power, but it can't go. Why? Because the generators did not say they want the ability to have long-term access to the transmission system. Now what you need to understand is so between the lines what you're seeing is something very different. You're seeing the emergence of a new architecture in the transmission sector. If I'm a captive power plant, I visualize that I'll only supply to my power plant, my aluminium complex, and if I have a surplus, I'll sell it off and on the grid. That was the concept, fine. But the aluminium complex has not come through or was not at that point consuming that power. So I have this huge $2.5 billion asset sitting there. Doesn't matter who funded it. And I have got power people who want my power, but I can't send it out. So the difference between dedicated capacity, long-term capacity, and short-term became an issue. Then we examined short-term transmission transactions in the context of trading. And to our surprise, we found that there are generators in this country who are paying long-term charges to power grid on the one hand, but have to stand in line behind traders who want to trade power on the power exchange and are given the last priority because they have merchant power plants. They are told that if you have a long-term PPA, we'll give you your access. But if you have a short-term transaction, then please stand in line behind that. So I'm paying power grid 20 odd crores every month. I built an asset worth $2-3 billion. I have customers who want to buy my power. But on the one hand, my long-term charges are being charged, but at the same time, I cannot dispatch it and there are reasons for that. I'm sure there are logical reasons which the session can discuss. We keep getting calls from the ministry, boss, what are you guys doing, sleeping, most slow moving this thing. Twice we had to ask the minister for extension. Finally, we came up with a game plan. It's a very simple game plan. I wish I could show you on the map. I don't have it right now, but it's there in the book if you've got it. It's making two concentric rings, literally, of 100,000 megawatts each. And these two concentric rings are the inner and outer ring roads, if you like, of the country, which I call the plug-and-play grid. And the question then has come is that transmission now has to anticipate load and generation. It's not the other way around. So we came to the conclusion that if you want this country to move forward, transmission has to anticipate. Now, how will transmission anticipate load when it has no data? A. B. You're building a super highway like this beautiful, the great Vajpayee ji's. I always thank this man for doing this quadrangle of these beautiful highways. But if there's no bypass into the village or into the town, what is the point? So I'm building these beautiful transmission lines of high capacity, but the states can't evacuate it. Why? Because the states are supposed to spend the money, the state transmission utility, to evacuate that power. But the state transmission utility has no money or is not interested in spending that money. So Mr. Ravinder and Mr. Rozekar, Power Grid and ex-CEA, are going to talk about how transmission now runs on the point of injection and the point of withdrawal postage stamps, and how we recommended the movement from that to something called a general network access charge, which means the same Sterlite plant can get long term provided he is willing to pay for it. The same Punjab can draw 7,000 provided they pay for it. With that, I will stop and invite the panelists to start off. Who wants to go first? Okay, Mr. Rozekar, he is, by the way, a very bright guy, so listen to him carefully. Rozekar, sir.
Good afternoon. I am Dilip Rozekar from Power Grid. I can understand the frustration of Mr. Harry Dhaul when he was explaining that power is available, the customers are available, and it simply cannot go. A generation company was selling to A. Now, since A is not paying, he should be able to send to B. So all these things are really what one should look for. But I was just remembering 15 years, 10 to 15 years back. Now, if I want to have a connect to internet, just Wi-Fi on, I'll switch on the Wi-Fi, get the internet. 15 years back, actually, I used to stand in a queue for STD in front of STD booth. And then I used to, was getting the opportunity to talk to my friends and family. What has happened in that sector which has not happened in electricity sector, that is actually causing us the heartburn. We have been able to move from wire to wireless, and that was why we are able to switch from one service provider to another service provider, be it Vodafone, Airtel. That was probably the thing which has not happened in the electricity sector, which is causing us a frustration that why I am not able to do when I can do with the telephone. There are two, three contours actually one has to understand before actually we can go into the problem. Number one, in telecom we talk of milliwatts, here we talk of megawatts. The number of zeros are too much of difference between milliwatt and megawatt. So that even that milliwatt is causing some problem. People are telling that don't keep your phone near your head when you are sleeping. It can cause damage to your brain. That milliwatt or microwatt can cause that thing. What will happen with the megawatts? Probably that is the reason that things have not happened the way it should have happened. So the first contour is that those electrons has to flow through wires. If the wires are there, electron will flow. If wires are not there, even if on one side seller is there, on the other side buyer is there, in absence of wire, electron won't flow. It is, the second thing is that transmission is a capital intensive infrastructure. We talk of 2 to 2.5 crores per kilometer. Think of 250 kilometers, 300 kilometers. And there are systems like Vishwanath Chariali, Agra, 2,500 kilometers. That project was for Lower Subansiri. If Lower Subansiri does not come, what will happen to 10,000 to 12,000 crore is one thing actually that is kept in mind, is required to be kept in mind. Second thing, the second contour on which the transmission operates is that it's directional. Once the towers have been put in the ground, you can't shift it. On paper, you can shift customers. On ground, you can't shift the transmission line. And with So much of people are getting knowledgeable and rightly so actually. Laying transmission lines is not simple nowadays. So, if if power from Tata was not being earlier was being sent to Rajasthan or Haryana, and they want to sell it to southern region and not able to do because simply the reason is that there is no wire, and that lowering of wire needs at least 3 to 4 years of gestation period. That is for India actually. I am talking of very good system actually. CRC has been tightening the efficiency on the construction of transmission line, and what we achieve in India is simply unthinkable because I had attended some cigarette sessions, and Europe and all you need 10 to 12 years for making a line. So if line is not there, power just can't go. Next thing actually, from these two, what stems is, if I don't anticipate, and if I anticipate wrongly, then I will not be able to serve to the requirement of power transfer. There are, he has also talked about regulation that unless you have long-term access, you can't schedule the power. And he has also quoted about the example of Chhattisgarh, where a lot of generation projects are there, but some huge investment is trending because the power is not going. Actually it's a transitory phase. Huge transmission capacity from Chhattisgarh is being created. Champa Kurukshetra 6000 megawatt HVDC is in the offing. There are good 765 kV transmission lines in the offing. What has happened is, yes, there has been a mismatch between what transmission system can come and when the generation did came. That mismatch was unfortunate, that is there is no doubt in that. Then Mr. Dhaul has also talked about concentric circles. I am just imagining, in fact I have seen that circle actually. Sir. That circle traverses from Orissa, probably goes through MP, Orissa, Jharkhand, Bihar, and then Rajasthan and UP, and then closes at traversing through MP and closes at Chhattisgarh. In transmission, such things are difficult to achieve. Now, even if I have those two concentric circles in place, let us say, at huge cost, mind you, because what we are talking about is 2.5 to 3 kilometer, 2.2 to 2.5 kilometer if it is a 765 kV single circuit line, and 3 to 3.5 kilometer per crores per kilometer if it is a double circuit line. I have it full circle, both concentric circles I am having. But the person in Chhattisgarh wants to go to Kerala. He is not traveling on that plug and play ring actually. So I will think then, okay, that circle should be actually crossing through the southern region, peninsula also. So if I have to draw that type of thing, then where I am leading is transmission has a typical problem. AC transmission, HVDC is okay. Transmission has a problem that if it is not loaded, it causes over voltage. You have to open it. So asset is there, but asset will be kept open because you can't control the voltage. That lines the transmission lines have a typical problem that they generate VAR, and that VAR, if it is consumed within the line, it's okay. If it is not consumed, the voltages goes very high.
Rozekar sir, let's make this debate a little interactive. So that means the Subansiri, which is going to generate power for 5 months in a year, you will keep the line open for the balance 8 months?
A very good question actually.
हाँ बोलो या ना बोलो यार.
मैं बता रहा हूँ sir. I am definitely बताऊँगा sir. In fact, Subansiri when the transmission system for Subansiri was being planned, we knew that the design capacity of that Subansiri, as far as the PLF is concerned, will be less, and that is the reason that we have made HVDC, which are not affected, not having that malaise of reactive power, and therefore those problems are not there. So Subansiri, Subansiri was made in a different, was quoted in a different context.
Dilip, now we are talking about an ultra mega solar project in Rajasthan.
Yes.
2,500 megawatt, 4,000
yes.
megawatt. So that project will be useful only for 7 to 8 hours a day.
Right.
So, but you have to build up a transmission network to cater 24 hours.
What to do? Yes. If I don't
So
build and when
it
the sun
means
is there, the power can't go.
So it means the cost of transmission will be 3 times than the normal cost.
It will be more if we want to, if you see, we wanted to have a concept of load to load. That means Mumbai is giving power to Delhi and Delhi giving power to Mumbai. It doesn't happen. Actually, power from where Mumbai was getting power, Mumbai from where it was getting power, will now give power to Delhi. It can't happen that power will first go to Mumbai and then travels to Delhi. So, but we are very much aware of the aspirations of the consumer of the market, and I also started having belief that probably there can be some corridors, not all. There can be some corridors which can be predicted. But there is a problem in that actually. The problem is not on the technical front. I can predict it can be less loaded for probably 4 to 5 years, 10 years for its initial phase. Later on, it's something like this, that if I make a road, that colony will come, or should I wait for the colonies and then only make the road? That is a chicken and egg type of situation there. But if we see the genesis through which the transmission system was developed was basically associated with the generation projects. So, generation projects coming, and those are coming matching with the load requirement. Naturally, there won't be more generation than what is required. So, to match those generation for the delivery to the intended customers, we planned the transmission system. That is how it was started. Now, the market probably demands that there should be some more surplus capacity available. That will of course come at a cost. It should be made available so that we can switch on, we can switch the customers from A to B and B to C. But that infrastructure will require to be built. It is not there as of now. What CRC or what our regulation says, that if you have, since transmission is a regulated business, so the tariffs are fixed. As he has correctly said, that means whether the power is flowing or not, you are getting the transmission company gets the money. So in the coming days, probably we are going to have some capacities which are not tied up with anything, and it will just based on the anticipation. And CRC has made us provision to approach them for regulatory approval in case there are no identified or just on the anticipation basis if you are making, then probably we will be able to cater to the aspirations of the market. Thank you very much.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Not letting you off the hook.
No.
So that means, have you made any application to CRC proactively saying that we now transmission should anticipate load?
11 number of high capacity corridors which CRC given the regulatory approval was based on the same concept. We actually proactively took up. We knew we have given long-term access for 48,000 megawatt. There were no identified customers. We have anticipated the requirement, and based on that, since it was on the basis of anticipation, we have gone to CRC. We took regulatory approval. CRC was also.
I am aware of all that. That's all old history. Now let's talk about the future.
In future also, I am.
Can you give us the date by when any customer in this country who has consumer choice, who has open access, can buy power from any source in this country? Can you give us a year? Forget about the date.
That I have told you very candidly actually, I must tell. That since electrons has to flow on wires, wires are required to be laid. Wires are laid, can be laid on anticipation to certain extent only. So, any amount of power in any direction never happens.
Okay. So that's not happening. Ravinder? One second, hold on. Before you, no, hold on. I know, I wanted to be interactive, but hold your horses. I want to have Ajay, can you just step in as a private sector wala who's participated, and then I want Ravinder to come in. We'll take that question on Subansiri and underutilization and the details. Specifics.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Harry, for inviting and giving me an opportunity to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to present a few data to you which will show you some inherent contradiction what this sector is facing. This data is known to you, but if we look at it in this structured manner, it presents a slightly confusing picture. Today, the installed capacity in this country is around 250,000 megawatt. It's a recorded data that the peak demand which was met was 135,000 megawatt, which means there was 115,000 megawatt capacity available in this country, which due to one reason or the other could not be brought to the customer. Now, even if you take away from this 115,000 megawatt auxiliary losses, transmission losses, certain other things, it could have still produced another 40 to 50,000 megawatt power very easily, which means almost 30% more load could have been met. That's one fact. The second fact is that in spite of this new capacity addition and in spite of all the peak load being met, both the peak power deficit as well as peak energy deficit has gone up. Now, as long as peak power deficit is not being met, it is still a controllable problem. Although it's not a desirable problem, but it's a controllable problem because it means that by shifting a load little bit, we can manage this peak. If we flatten the peak, we can meet this demand. But once you start facing peak energy deficit or energy deficit per se, that means that there are load which is connected which is really suffering. This is fact number 2. The fact number 3, that in spite of all this hue and cry for the power, that power is not being made available, both the cost of renewable energy certificates as well as the traded power on both the exchanges fell. The price, which at one time used to be as much as 4.5 rupees to 5 rupees, came down to 2 rupees, and I have been told that sometimes in winter it was possible, sometimes in the night, it was possible to buy power at less than 1 rupee a unit. This is the third fact. And the fourth fact is that beyond this 250,000 megawatt, today morning somebody gave this data, but I am telling you from the recorded data, 95,000 megawatt is the capacity of the diesel generation in this country, which is run at imported fuel, where the per unit power generation cost is anything between 12 to 16 rupees. And we don't have to go very far. Within Delhi, you can see areas which are fed on DG set. You just step out of Delhi, you go to Gurgaon, entire colonies, entire commercial buildings are running on DG set and they are paying 12 to 16 rupees. You go to Ghaziabad, you go to other part of NCR and you can see deficit. Now, look at these numbers in a holistic manner. On one hand, we are saying that consumer requires power, like what we are saying, consumer wants plug and play, but we are not able to meet the demand. On another hand, if suppose we are not meeting the demand, the law of economics says that in the exchanges, the power rate should have gone up, but that rate is not going up. On the other hand, we have invested hundreds of thousands of crores in DG sets for which we are importing fuel and then burning it. My humble submission is, my thinking goes is that on one hand, what some fact today morning somebody mentioned, which is well known to practically everybody in this room, 40% of the consumers are still not connected. Now, these consumers are not connected by high power corridor or the 765 kV line or 800 kV HVDC, which are being created by at the national network level or at the regional network level. These consumers come on board. These small towns, these small industrialists get power when they get connected to at least 33 kV or 66 kV level. If you look at the transmission sector growth data in last few years, the highest growth has been in 765 kV segment. If I am not wrong, Rozekar will correct me, upwards of 40%. Okay, low base effect, but is still highest. 400 kV has grown at something like 12 to 13% on a very large base. 220 kV, less than 5%, almost 5.5 or 6%, and 132 kV even further low, which basically points out to me that we are not able to bring consumers on board. It's not a question that we are, it is of course a question that we are not able to bring generators on board. But my bigger worry is, because at the end of the day, it is the consumer who has to buy my power. If there are no takers, today you talk to several state electricity boards, I am telling you a large number of them say, we don't need power. Like today's morning somebody mentioned in Haryana that they have 12,500 megawatt contracted power while their peak demand doesn't cross 8,000 megawatt. So why is this happening? Because we have not kept pace in bringing consumers on board, giving them quality supply, making sure that they get power 24/7, they have some assurance about that, so that they then in turn go and make investments, whether it is home appliances, whether it is a small industry, or whether any other thing which consumes power, which runs on reliable power. So this is one hugely neglected area. The topic of this agenda is whether transmission is a key market enabler. I have no doubt in my mind, certainly it's an enabler, but sub-transmission is even a bigger enabler. And in my personal opinion, electricity, a touch of electricity can change your life, both literally and figuratively. You touch a live wire, it will actually change your life. But the point is, unless you invest in sub-transmission, unless you bring that consumer for whom power plant is being put up, for whom transmission, I had a business called Sterlite Grid. My business is to build transmission lines. If anybody tells me we are going to add another 100,000 megawatt, 100,000 kilometers of transmission line, it's music to my ears. But let's not fool ourselves. At the end of the day, it is the consumer who is paying. At the end of the day, it is the root. What Mr. Saxena today morning was saying, these are the weak legs of that elephant. If ultimately the demand is not coming, or consumer is not capable of paying, or somehow is not getting an opportunity to consume the power and pay, nothing will be sustainable. And I mean, it might sound harsh. I think it will be foolhardy to invest even a single penny in renewable energy sources, which to start with is start handicapped. If we are not able to serve power at 3 rupees, 3.5 rupees, 4 rupees, why are we telling ourselves that we can afford power of 8 rupees, 9 rupees, or 10 rupees in renewable energy? It's a need of this country, but if we do not make structural changes, if we do not bring in customer and hence make these investments viable, hence these investments make bankable, it is not sustainable. That's the point I want to make. Thank you.
Well, I think you are in very unsafe conditions because there are too many renewable fellows in the hall. So you get beaten up. But let's go back to the gentleman who want to talk about, raise a question of Subhanshri. Microphone for the gentleman, please, quickly. Arey, Dada, 1 minute. Mic, please. Wake up. Mic wala. Haan, jaldi. Go ahead, sir.
ABL Srivastava, Director Finance of NHPC. I just wanted to tell that Subhansri is basically a peak load generator, and all 365 days peak power of 2000 megawatts will be supplied. It is not for 5 months only. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks for clarifying. And of course, Rozekar will take care of the non-peak hours by over something, right? Thank God I'm not technical here. I ask all these foolish questions. Okay, who wants to go next? You want to go next? Or do you want to go next? Sir, solar, abhi bahut gadgad ho jayegi. Solar mein to. Generator perspective. Okay. All right, let our friend go ahead. Want to do it from here? We covered beautifully in the movie.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On the transmission, I just wanted to present the generator perspective. See, the cost of generation and cost of transmission component is hardly 10 to 15% of the generation. So we don't mind paying a transmission charges, provided we have been allowed.
Can you speak a little louder, closer?
Provided we have been
volume, please.
Allowed reliable connectivity to the grid. Now let's start. So let us say I wanted to set up a power project in the country, say around 1000 megawatt in state A. So what I have to do is, for financial closure, I have to have land, water, fuel, environment, etc., besides having connectivity to the grid. Now, to allow me to have a connectivity to the grid, I have to make an application, And based on my application, a selection process is on, where our PFC and REC as a bid coordinator, based on the recommendation of CA, will select a person who is going to give me connectivity to the grid. So this entire process nowadays takes more than 4 to 5 years. So by the time this process is over, my generation plant is almost ready. So what happened is that I'm not able to even proceed further till this process is completed. Now, once I got a connectivity, I have to apply for the open access. For open access, I've been asked to give target beneficiaries. It's very strange. I am in the very, very preliminary stage of setting up a project. I have to identify target beneficiaries. For the purpose of this rule, I say, okay, target beneficiaries are in northern region and let us say eastern region. Now, after 6 years, there is hardly any bidding process in the country. And if at all it is there, it is from southern region. So who is going to invite the bid and how much and how I'm going to be selected there, it is not in my hand. But I have to identify a target beneficiary. Now, when I go there after 4 years, say, okay, my now customer is in southern region instead of north and east, I am told, now you stand in the queue and your turn will come after 4 years. So my whole idea is the planning of transition should proceed ahead.
So let Rozekar respond to that, because this is exactly what I was saying. What you are saying is by the time you got ready, the market is shifted. Rozekar, now what do you want us to do? The load is gone from northern region to southern region. Ab kya karne ka bolo na? Power grid zindabad. No, take a mic. Mic le lo na.
Sir.
Yeah, either we'll join power grid and get a job, or you tell us what to do.
What did you say?
The load has shifted, what will you do?
No, you
So
wanted
much
to
for
join
paying
power grid or something
attention
like
to
that.
the session, yaar, Rozekar. He's saying he planned a project where the load was anticipated, his customers in the northern region and eastern region. By the time the project got set up, the load has got saturated, now the demand has gone to southern region. So what should he do?
You should draw lines to southern region.
Achha, so he should first set up the, okay, this reminds me of I must interrupt this 2-minute debate. In the early days of Enron, we used to have these conferences in the 90s, and the story goes like this: the American gentleman who used to come from there would say that, Mr. Dhaul, I have come here to set up a power project, but now I am finding that I have to first build a railway line to get my fuel, and I have to build my gas facility, I have to become a gas wala, I have to become a fuel manager, I have to invest in the gas in Qatar, I also have to build my transmission line. What is this? You want to build a transmission line? You want to set up a generating
No, I
station?
didn't say that he has to make the transmission.
Yeah, that's exactly what you said. Didn't you say that?
No.
He should build a transmission line? Bola na?
No. I think you heard it wrong. Actually.
Okay.
What is required, you asked, I am telling you, what is required is, there is the requirement is a wire for flow of electron. Like Wi-Fi, they can't go in wireless.
Point well taken. Nikolai Tesla bichara mar gaya pehle.
So
But
I'm telling you, because with the changing market environment and all, the many number of transmission lines are now being made on anticipation. Over 16,000 megawatt ATC shall
Fantastic.
be
So you have-
available.
so you answered it.
So 16,000 megawatt ATC shall be available by the next 4 to 5 years. Actually.
No, good. So therefore, what he's saying to you, sir, as power grid, is by next 4 to 5 years, your power can flow anywhere.
So, okay, that is what we want.
No,
Basically,
hold on. There are two elements I'm going to introduce here for Rozekar's benefit, because then he'll ask me again, what have you said? Number one, please understand that when he produces these lines and you are able to move your power up and down, he's going to charge you a certain amount of money, and Ravinder is going to come to that later, as general network access charge to fund these lines.
see, that is what I have told in the beginning, that cost
He is
of
ready for
transmission is
that.
hardly 15% of the generation, the tariff.
You're willing to pay?
That is not the issue, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Fine.
I cannot afford
Of
to
course,
control up my
there is
power.
one more point.
So he should wait another 5 years, then Rozekar will promise you that. कोई बात 5 साल wait कर लिया.
Yeah, no. I'm making promise on behalf of Ajay Bhardwaj actually.
Ajay Bhardwaj.
will be one of the person who will be laying these.
Okay,
lines.
please note, Power Grid is now passing on the buck to private sector.
Not back passing on the buck.
No, I mean,
If I don't pass on the buck, Ajay Bhardwaj will sue me actually.
no, as a matter of fact, what he's saying is right, because the couple of 765 kV double circuit lines which are being built from Chhattisgarh to take away the pains of Mr. Ravi Arya, one is being done by them, another is being done by us. And both of us have been blessed by the forest department. So Mr. Ravi Arya is suffering. So that's the fact of life.
As a generator, my only request is whatever planning methodology you follow, whether it is a regional base, whether it is a POC, GNA, whatever it is, please ensure the power is not bottled up.
Great. You want to come on board, Mr. Mishra? You want to come on board? Okay, let's finish the left side and then we'll come to the right side because the ultimate answers lie on this side. So we'll hear this. Go ahead.
Yep. Actually, the session is a question. That's can transmission be a market enabler?
Closer.
Right. So I'd like to answer that. Is there any confusion about it?
I don't know.
So everybody, all of us, we understand that transmission has to be the market enabler. Then in this perspective, we have to understand what is the market then, which it is going to enable. Today, the power market, if you see, it has three products, distinct products. One is the short-term market, then the medium-term, and the long-term. What is happening today, we have certain regulations which are governing these markets. How the short-term access is going to be allowed, how the medium-term is going to be allowed, and how is the long-term going to be allowed. So as far as I understand, medium-term and long-term, they have more on a contract path. There is a specific contract. And if somebody is trying to create certain capacity on these kind of products, then there is a commitment from transmission side that yes, the transmission evacuation is going to be built. The major confusion that is coming is on the short-term market, if I understand today.
Mr. Mishra, can I play the role of the devil's advocate? Because my job is to make sure nobody goes to sleep in the audience. First question, you said long-term market is okay, short-term is the problem. I think it's the other way around. Today, distribution companies are not willing to sign long-term contracts.
No, I'm coming there.
Mr. Mishra, please talk of transmission service products separately and market separately.
No, I'm
Short-term transmission service.
Yeah, I'm coming there. From there, actually, when
Short-term market is much more healthier. Long-term PPA is under dispute.
no, I'm talking about the evacuation for the.
That is transmission service.
That's okay.
Long-term, medium-term, short-term. Okay.
So, basically, when we are talking of a market, the buyers and seller, we are talking about the facilitation through transmission. That is the scope of this discussion. So, I'm not talking about the market per se. I'm trying to say how the transmission is facilitating this kind of market. So, when I'm talking about that, what I'm trying to emphasize is, as per the regulation, for medium term and long term, there is a particular mechanism which has been specified how it is going to be evacuated. But when you come to short term, there is nothing. Though we are calling them the short term customer, this customer is not the English term customer, it's the Hindi term customer.
I don't understand. Can you explain what is English, Hindi customer?
So it's basically कष्ट से मरने वाला आदमी.
अच्छा, कष्ट से मरने. What a beautiful description.
So
And
what is
round of applause, sir. Round of beautiful. कष्ट से मरने वाले का नाम कस्टमर है. वाह.
customer? So
तो ये emphasis कष्ट पे है या मर पे है?
Mr. Arya will speak about it because he's
already finished, yeah, for God's sake.
He is the customer. I am the transmission service provider. So what is happening, apart from the lighter side, when I was going through the short-term market report by CERC for 2012 and 13, I saw that in 2012 and 13, about 16 billion units of power couldn't be sold because of transmission constraint. So if we look at that figure, it's about 650 to 700 crores of business that couldn't happen. Now, like Mr. Arya was telling, that when we talk about
6,000, not 6,000.
No, sorry, it's 98 billion was the transacted thing. It says that 17% couldn't be transacted. I'm sorry. So it's about 16 billion units which couldn't be transacted. So that is coming to about 650 crores. This, no, 16 billion units.
चलो ठीक है यार लड़ लेना बाद में.
Whatever
It
it
couldn't be
it's
done.
about 640 crores or any figure. So that is amounting about 250 to 300 megawatt of power not getting evacuated due to transmission constraints. And there is no definite mechanism to handle this. That's the first issue that I would like to bring up. Now, here, as Mr. Arya was telling,
एक माइक देना है वर्मा जी को. भाई रुक जाओ, हमारी गाड़ी ही कस्टमर हो गया. सर, माइक for boss. Move a little faster, boss. We don't have time.
Yeah, whatever we are discussing, I think lack of information is another area.
Major area.
Major area जिसमें कष्ट से मर रहे हैं लोग सब. The question, what he says that 16 million units or whatever was not sold. The market people used to come to CRC when I was there, and they were posing this problem. I told them that, are you prepared to pay the transmission costs? We will reserve a corridor for you, or we will build a transmission line for you so that the power is not transmitted, power is not stranded. They said, no, we will not, because they are not very sure about it. How many units when they want to transact? So you cannot work in that circumstances. He has already explained to you that wire is required. Now, if you have a customers in this direction, and you say that I build a line for them, tomorrow you say I will go to south, who will pay for this line? So, knowing all these constraints, we must discuss. I mean, otherwise the discussion is going haywire.
Sir, I wanted to go haywire. I'm learning so much. Customer, नया word सीखा है मैंने. Go ahead, finish.
This about the technical constraints in the transmission, Mr. Rozekar has already pointed out. We'll come to that later on. I'm just talking about the commercial side of the business that is getting constrained. Whatever may be the technical constraints, this is the kind of economic activity which was stalled if the CRC report is correct. If I go by the CRC report of FY 12 and 13, that is my limited point. So here, it's about 250 to 300 megawatt of power not getting evacuated for whatever reason. Now, how do we handle it? If you look at the evaluation, I was looking at the same report which says that in last 5 years, the average market price of power is has fallen from about 7 rupees 50 paisa to about 4 rupees or 350. So on one side, the market price of power is falling in the last 5 years, and the quantum of power that is getting transacted on short term, that is increasing from 2 to 3% to today it's about 11%. So it shows there is a quantum stress on the transmission network. So the transmission service providers or the network building of transmission has to keep pace with the market requirement. There is no second opinion.
Mr. Mishra, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I'm just again playing devil's advocate. You are saying on the one hand, there's so much stranded capacity, there's this, there's that. Now you are saying that the amount of power that is coming onto the power exchange is gone up exponentially,
Right.
but the price of electricity has come down.
Right.
Don't you think that some distribution companies who have tied up long-term contracts at 6 and 7 rupees are dumping power on the power exchange just because of cash flow issues? Or you're not aware of that?
I'm not concerned about this because my perspective
Sorry?
here is transmission.
That's the beauty of the market. So we'll have one more FRP package coming up in a few years for those discoms. Okay, go ahead.
So what I am trying to say that going forward, this kind of uncertain transactions, those are going to put pressure on the transmission network more and more. So how do we handle it? So if that is going to be the situation, then as Mr. Dhaul said, then we have to have some kind of plug and play mechanism. So that is essential. We can't shy away from that kind of requirement. So today, what is happening? Like Mr. Arya said, that the price of power is about 4 rupees. And today, if you look at the point of connection transmission charge, it is about 14 paisa average. So for this 600 odd crores of power which could have been transacted, the transmission cost would work out to about 25 to 30 crores. So I don't know why the generators are not ready to pay for the transmission. That is number one. If the commercial mechanism is such that it's basically very, very insignificant, if the transmission cost is very, very insignificant compared to the business the generators are going to handle, I don't understand any commercial...
I understand, but also if I may add to what you're saying, it's not just the generator who's the player, even the distribution companies become a player.
Yeah.
So he may also want to sell his surplus power or buy surplus power.
That's right.
So I think the regulator should keep this in mind, that even the distribution companies become a player in the market which was traditionally only done by generators. So distribution companies will also have to pay a certain charge, and that's what Ravinder is going to talk about. Go ahead.
Hari, I just want to add one point here. You see, when we are saying market enabler, we are primarily saying that the cheapest power should be able to find the best customer, which means the customer who is capable of paying, he must have access to the cheapest power and nowadays the best power in terms of environmental safety also. Now, to enable that, basically the transmission network and the sub-transmission network, that is what is supposed to play the most important role, and the regulatory mechanism in terms of open access, in terms of permission to trade and things like that, these are the kind of enablers which are necessary on top of the physical network. So physical network in itself is not good enough. The point is the other enablers must also come into picture.
In fact, I agree with you. In fact, the other enablers, if the regulatory commissions become proactive, then as Mr. Verma rightly said, if somebody is willing to pay for the transmission line, then somebody will build it. I don't see a problem.
Yep.
Great.
So here, actually, I would like to suggest certain things. Like Mr. Dhaul's suggestion of transmission national beltway. This concept, of course, this was first dealt with in 99 to 2003, in that period also, when I was in Power Grid Corporation of India, and we used to discuss about it. So that time, it was thought of creating a national highway, which is now partly built in terms of national grid. But that time, the issue was the requirement for this kind of a network, who is going to pay for. So it was assessed that about 25,000 crores that time, in 99, was required to create this kind of a thing. So when we went to the Ministry of Finance with this proposal, so Ministry of Finance said, these are the words of Ministry of Finance, that if you can afford only a Maruti 800, why are you aspiring for a Mercedes? So it was shot down. We tried to make sense that there is a decommissioning cost. If we want to increase the capacity, then it is going to cost the economy hugely. But that time it was an idea which was not accepted from two perspectives. One was the investment, who is going to pay, because if we have a kind of...
No, Mishra ji, you made that point repeatedly. Who is going to pay? We'll come to that.
Yeah.
And I would like to reserve that as the part of the last comments, because it's an interesting point. But let's hear Ravinder ji on who's going to pay and what he sees as the new architecture of the future for transmission. I think, Ravinder, if you go up, it'll be better. In your presence, it'll be even larger if you go up and speak. Can you go closer to the mic? Can you increase the volume, please?
Hello. Okay. So thank you very much for the introduction to the subject. I think time is short. Let me, I want to straight away give some positive and workable suggestions, because we are very important people among audience who can implement ideas. But to begin with, how it started was that in the morning session, CEO of SR Power, what is his name? Maru. Mr. Maru came to met me, and he thumped his hand on the table. The table was about to break. He said, I have spent 5,000 crores. What do I do with my power plant? there's no transmission. And then second thing, I rattled some replies to him that you did not apply for LTA in time and things like that. But, I was upset. I partly felt guilty about it. And then Mr. Dhaul was in the subgroup, and then Minister wanted some doable ideas in a very short time. Then I thought, let me think of something concrete on the transmission angle. So with these and all the issues which I was handling every day, connectivity problems, people coming without a DPR asking for connectivity for a 3,000 megawatt plant, 6,000 megawatt plant, and no commitment to pay, not a piece of land and things like that. So that is the background, and then 2004 we started this open access business as per the act, and then at that time long-term PPAs prevailed. They were the flavor of the day, and short-term market was to be enabled only. So margins were used. So in 2007-8 medium-term access was introduced. 2010 some more reforms were done by CRC. Then the pancaking or transmission charges and losses, that was removed by having a national pool under what is called the POC mechanism. So a lot of things have happened, but my plea to the people who are in power and decision-making ability is that we have to go on continuously evolving our system. I used to get a lot of bashing from my chief legal in CRC that, Ravinder, why do you come up with amendments to regulations every 6 months? So, but I think we should not mind that. We have to do it. And now the problem is that as Ravi has put it, Arya has put it very, very, very honestly and simply, that he is ready to pay. Don't ask me the target beneficiaries. I think we should stop asking who is the target beneficiaries. It is for us to analyze. CTU should be strengthened, made a proper body with lot of manpower, with foresight, so that, seeing that demand patterns and shifting demand patterns and demand growth and all those things, to see that which are the regions towards which we have to send the power. That thing, because generators' estimates have not proved to be correct, so there's a lesson for us. And then once we ask here CTU to plan it, we must empower CTU, because responsibility can be taken only if they have the power. Today there is a confusion. There is a standing committee where you have to have a consensus. There is a CA which has to chair the meeting. CTU is a member, and then it goes to RPC for approval. So I think we should have regulations for CTU that how they will implement the transmission system. We must empower them so that when they see the need, when they see the congestion, foresee the congestion or real-time congestion, they should be able to respond quickly to it. And whatever the money is in transmission coming as a result of that has to be distributed over tariff. And there should be no need of RPC approval. There is no need, because that is what the national national electricity policy also says, that prior approval is not required of the beneficiaries to plan and implement transmission system. I think we need to implement it because the market has become dynamic. This overcharging business, is still continuing, because if you are paying for long-term access, then you have to also pay for short-term exchange, and that double charging those are minor reforms to be done. But the basic thing which is happening is that earlier short-term market was a small fringe. Now we have to plan for the entire transmission system. We made a mistake, I will admit that for Odisha, phase 1, there is 7,000 megawatt of generating capacity which was to come up, and is coming up. Some of it is commissioned. So the long-term applications came for, say, 5,000 megawatt. So we build the system for 5,000. That cannot be done. Now for the generating capacity, we have to build the system. That is on the generation end. Second thing is, we have to now take into account that people will now buy power according to law of economics, according to merit order. They will They will stop their own generation and buy cheaper power from the exchange. And Haryana does it, Delhi does it, Gujarat does it, and even open access consumers do it. SR doesn't buy power from their own captive plant in Mahan, they buy power from the exchange one day, another day from Mahan, depending on what is cheaper. So on the draw land, that flexibility, the load of Haryana can vary by so much megawatt, Punjab can vary, that planning has to be automatically done by the CTU on the interstate level, and they should be empowered to do it and then held accountable for it. And as far as charging of GNA is concerned, there was a lot of criticism from Mr. Shahi, from Mr. Madan, so many people, generator side, that you are creating a permanent liability. If somebody asks for more transmission, he has to pay more for it. I think for that the solution lies in what is done in America and North Pole. We can adopt any of those variants that for the system which is created, in America they see hourly megawatt and ratio of each person's megawatt. You can see monthly maximum demand of the country in the month and everybody's transmission utilization in terms of megawatt. And then you can share that actual usage ratio of the system, so that it is not that if you ordered 7,000 megawatt and you are using for 6 hours, you have to 6 months in a year, you pay for the whole year. So, and the other person who also, so that the revenue will be neutral. So we can find little difference, the rates can be found out by POC method, but the application can be done little differently, that problem can be solved. So that generators do not feel taxed that they set up a plant of 1,000 megawatt, their units are not commissioned, their coal is delayed, and they have a perpetual liability to pay 20 crores per year for 25 years. That leads to be little moderated. However, there's a caveat. But so for the generation, and sir, I agree with Mr. Dilip that I cannot forecast the location of generation. So generation has to inform us in time so that generation mile evacuation corridor, either he has to build up with a dedicated line, he has to meet the grid. If I have to shake hand with him at his switchyard, then he has to serve me notice. And then once he orders me to build that corridor for him, then there should be some financial liability, say 50% of the POC charge for 5 years, 7 years. There should be some guarantee that my transmission new assets will not become a standard asset. So with some, I think we need to think fresh, open mind, and list down the problems, and I can give solution to every problem.
So Ravinder, what you're saying is, other than Rozekar, everybody here agrees that we need to go towards the consumer's requirement of a plug-and-play grid. Am I right?
No, I am agreeing, sir.
Oh, you're agreeing. But you say it's not technically possible.
I was saying, no, sir, please. What I was telling is that.
Yes.
One.
Bhaiya.
What I was telling, sir, that some extra margin, maybe to 30%, 40%, 50% can be made. But if swapping of 100% on the guaranteed basis associated with the penalties and all is you can't have that
Okay,
type of
let me pose you a counter in this audience for you to answer now or later. Are you aware that nobody in the West today, particularly in Europe, is signing long-term contracts? The maximum they're signing is 3 years.
I know, I had been to North
You're
Pole.
aware,
I had been
right?
to North Pole.
Now, why is that? Because the market keeps changing.
Yes.
The generator wants options, the distribution company wants options.
Yes.
This is going to happen.
Yes, I agree.
So therefore, you have to be prepared for it.
I'll tell you, just to make my point actually. Southern region, 3 years before, was projected a huge surplus.
We're aware of that.
Okay. Now, we have made some lines. We have downgraded, we had, there are corridors where we have, it's a 765 kV corridor, we know some project can come tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, so we have charged at 400 kV. But we have reserved the corridor. So, at wherever we could do, at least I know one Nagapattinam corridor, one other Tuticorin corridor, it is charged at 400 kV. So what I mean to say that, unless, I have laid the line actually.
No,
Based
Ravinder,
on the assumption.
I'm sorry, Rozekar, maybe I'm not understanding you. You're making contradictory statements. You said it's not technically possible for a consumer from point A in the country to point B to have a relationship of buy and sell. Now you're saying that we have reserves and we can do it. So what are you saying?
I will make a point.
Because in the context of short-term market.
No, I'll try to clarify. What I was telling, first and foremost is, electron needs wire to flow.
Yes, we know all that.
Okay. Once you know that actually, so based on that, what I was trying to say is, I can create, and after seeing the market aspirations, I am now creating some additional margins planning. Of course, it will take some time, some gestation period for that to come. So with that, probably there will be slightly more flexibility in terms of swapping of customers, swapping of generations. But as Ravinder ji has very correctly said, towards the generation side, the generation has to give me notice some days ahead, because he is also making.
But what about load to load?
Huh?
What about load to load?
That is possible.
That's
Load to load is possible. We need to strengthen inter-regional link.
Exactly.
Make
Inter-regional
them
link.
triple
Exactly.
or more stronger.
Exactly.
We do some N-1 studies. We
Brilliant.
can do it.
Perfect. Can I now ask Rajneesh to share his thoughts?
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much. All I prepared to say here has been said. So I am at loss of words. But I have certain things, like certain thoughts which came in my mind during the discussions. Mr. Dhaul said that we should have a ring road kind of things, 2 rings. Mr. Dilip said that yes, we have something kind of that and we are further working on it. So where lies the problem? The problem is of pockets. Like in South India, there is a pocket which is having shortage of power. In Chhattisgarh, Odisha, we have pockets. In Rajasthan, we have pockets which have surplus power. And that power needs to reach from load to load, right? So that is the issue. Second thing Mr. Dhaul said, and he raised a question, lobbed a question, he said plug and play. Plug and play is also possible when we free the content from the carriage. So that is also under legislation. I think this government will take up and it will be legislated soon. So when the content and carriage will be separated, then it will be more likely to create a situation of plug and play. But then again, there are restrictions in the transmission corridors which has been discussed, and there are problems, there are pockets, there are inter-regional links which are causing constraints. I take care of the transmission system of Delhi. So in Delhi, in 2012, we had a severe blackout rather in northern region because of that inter-regional transmission link of Agra-Gwalior. So that created havoc. So that these links, of course, need to be enhanced, and 2000 megawatt link is being created in the southern region from west to south. But there is surplus power again in east and northeastern region. That needs to be brought to south, which is again power starved. Punjab is also facing problem of transmission constraints and corridors. So, it's not a problem if we need to have a holistic view. At the same time, we need to see the pockets at our disposal. By end of 12th plan, we will be having, I think, 3 lakh kilometers of circuit kilometers of power grid, if I am not wrong, and more than 13 lakh MVA power transmission capability. So that we have the capabilities, but again, that capability may not be available to certain areas, which is in the dire needs of the power. So again, let us come to that issue which was raised. In Gurgaon, people are ready to pay 10 rupees and more than 10 rupees for diesel generated power. So that they can, and they are ready to pay for the reliable power. There are power plants in Delhi, Bhavana power plant, which is gas-based power plant, and we can generate power at 5 rupees at the most. That power can be given to Gurgaon. At Jhajjar, we have a power plant, which is selling to Kerala and Andhra Pradesh.
Haryana itself has power.
That is what I'm telling, Jhajjar.
Distribution.
Absolutely. Absolutely, that is what I'm saying. Plus, not only distribution network, sir, the problem is of tariff also. Because if I go to the state route, if I am installing a diesel generator and giving the power, no issue. But if I am going to the state route, I'll have to sell power to Haryana Distribution Company, right, sir? And Haryana Distribution Company will sell the power to the consumer at the tariff defined by the HERC, correct? So, and HERC is not ready to give that power tariff to the distributor or generator, which the consumer is ready to pay. So that again is a point which need to be.
No, but why can't they pool it here? I mean, why should, no, I think HERC is quite reasonable. Why can't HERC be told to pool this cost? Because this will be a percentage.
That is what I am saying.
See,
I don't know whether it has been thought of or
100
not,
megawatts.
but it can be thought
one
of.
minute. 100 megawatts, 1 sec, sir. 100 megawatts, may up 10 megawatts or 5 megawatts you're giving of this high cost power. It will be a pooled increase, no? So where's the issue?
But there is issue. That
yeah, Haryana, Chairman Haryana, I'd like to speak. Please give a mic.
Please.
I don't think the Commission will have any issue on this. In fact, last year, we got an application from the distribution company that to customers who are willing to pay a higher tariff, they'll assure 24 hours power and have a reliability surcharge. And we approved that with certain conditions. So I don't think the Commission will have any issue on that.
But then, sir, my question is why still diesel sets are running?
Nobody has come to us. Nobody has come to us.
Please go outside after this session and give me 10% of the deal, okay?
I'll get that.
Resident of Gurgaon, what they're talking.
Can you introduce yourself?
I'm Shiv Kaushik from Science Technology and resident of Gurgaon. So what the chairman is talking, he might have given in principle approval, but the fact of the matter, what this gentleman is saying, that why the diesel genset are still running. So the distribution companies are not in a position to provide the connectivity. In fact, you will all be surprised the kind of connectivity which is being provided to.
No, but hello, what he's already said is sub-transmission is not in place. He's already said it. No? You're talking about sub-transmission. No?
No, I'm talking the
last mile connectivity.
Last mile connectivity to the consumers. So even they have a proposal where they assure that it is 24/7 supply, but this is just on paper.
So is it all right if a private party comes, ties up with my friend Rajneesh Srivastava, who will not be involved in any scams, right, to supply me power at X price, and then this private party goes and builds the transmission last mile connectivity, and you will get 24/7. You're willing to pay a higher price?
Absolutely, people are still paying, and even that diesel genset is not reliable. It's so much noise pollution, it is so much
It's an opportunity
yes.
which can
Very
be
good.
like encashed by the
I invite all of you to capitalize on this opportunity, since we have a very dynamic regulator who is very proactive. Yes?
Yeah, I would like to add to this. Actually,
Are you also from Gurgaon, sir?
Yeah, I have got my transit house in Gurgaon.
All right,
I know
sir.
Mr. Srivastava very well.
Just one sec, can I get these two technocrats off the ground? Hello, Baba, we're discussing धंधे की बात यार, तुम्हारे लिए धंधा है.
Yeah, actually, whatever this gentleman has said is 100% correct. I have my transit house in Gurgaon, in one of the so-called POS area there. I am paying 16.84 rupees per unit. And as far as your department is concerned, I don't think anyone ever pays any attention to this. Thank you.
But you're paying but hold on. The guy who's charging you 16 bucks is clever. He's also charging you for other charges mixed into it, so the regulator can't put his finger onto it, right?
Whatever it is, actually.
But my point is, he's ready to
that.
pay, na? He's paying and he's ready to pay. So no, but he can be given choice. That is what I am saying, that there is an opportunity. Anyway.
Can I just ask one question? When we say, when the consumers are ready to pay higher charges, who will decide how much is the higher charges is good or optimum?
The consumer.
Market.
No, market.
Not consumer. The market. The market forces has to decide what is the appropriate charges for a particular pocket. Because
but you also have to
facing
understand,
it.
I must come to the defense of, I'm sorry, I'm wearing a neutral hat here. So I must come to defense of the distribution companies. They are suffering from huge amount of overhang in terms of cross subsidies, right? But my submission to you is that yes, you are right. It's something, it's a great opportunity, and I'm sure somebody will capitalize on it. But at the same time, you do have a problem where you can't just do this overnight.
No,
Because if you look at the graph of the paying consumers of every distribution company and look at the revenue they're getting and versus the costs, you'll find that the paying juicy consumers, one of the reasons why open access has not really succeeded is that they're going to take away the paying consumers from the distribution companies and leave the rest of them. Exactly what Gopal mentioned, that the airport in Bombay is with Tatas and the slums around Bombay is with BSES.
Okay.
So that's the kind of thing. So you have to do it very carefully. The calibration, the regulator will do the calibration carefully, and he does it through the cross-subsidy surcharge and other ways. I'm sure he's doing it. But yes, you have a point.
No,
Point
Mr.
taken.
Mr. Dhaul, one thing you went wrong is about the cross-subsidy part. And as far as reliable power is concerned, it doesn't come into the picture. That's left out of the cross-subsidy plus minus 20%.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
You said that they have a huge issue about cross-subsidy. Just now you mentioned about the higher charges, how much should be charged. So in that context, if it is reliable power, whether it is 20 rupees, 30 rupees or 40 rupees, that is an advantage to the commission to the extent, regulator, that it doesn't come within the statutory restriction of plus minus 20%.
No, I understand, Mr. Nanda, but the problem is slightly different. The problem is there are 2-3 vested interests here. The fellow who's charging 16 rupees is not charging for power. He's charging for maintenance charges. He's mixing up all the other charges that go into it.
No.
Right? Acha, it's become pure electricity.
Yes.
Fair enough. Okay, I stand
That's what it
corrected.
is.
I am 4 years old in my survey of Gurgaon, so maybe things have changed. But my point was very limited. My point is, are you going to give the paying consumers away under open access and let the distribution companies live with the fellow who has to cross-subsidize? Dr. Dev?
You see, what we are talking is Pune model, and in Maharashtra it is already being practiced. After Pune, they have covered all divisional headquarters, where reliable power is given and there is an additional supply charge. So which basically what it means is, apart from whatever the cross subsidy does not come into picture, whatever you had done based on the distribution company's requirement, additional power is reserved for that pockets. Also, Pune model has one thing, there will be always some small consumers who will say, we don't want to pay this extra. So for that, the Pune model had provided that those who are consuming less than 300 units, they will not have to pay that. That burden will be passed on to those high-rise consumers, and that model works. So there is nothing really it's being practiced.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Gopal, you are the last interaction because I've got the speakers from the other session giving me dirty looks.
Yeah. I don't want any dirty looks coming my way. I have enough sins on me. Two things, I think what Ajay and what Rajneesh have said are very important, and I'll just come back to the main subject.
Speak loudly.
I'll just like to come back to the main subject. 2 points that both Ajay and Rajneesh have touched upon. Number one, the interconnects between the various grids as it is, southeastern, eastern, central, northern and western, southern. The problem is, and we had occasion to see that in 2012 when there was a grid collapse, and we had occasion to see that in Delhi recently on 30th of May. Interconnection on the main transmission network and interconnection between the main transmission network and the regional transmission networks. The problem occurred both times. In Delhi recently when it occurred, a lot of blame was passed on to the DISCOMs, that you don't have enough carrying capacity, no backfeed, this, that. And I mean, I was hauled up before the Minister of Power, before the PMO and everybody. Mr. Rajneesh Srivastava is smiling. because basically the problem lay in them.
You can't say anything to him, boss.
No.
If one tower of transmission goes,
I'm sorry.
then you should have an
Rajneesh,
arrangement for giving. Anyway,
if
let us
the
not
load
get into
collapsed,
that.
load collapsed from 4,900 to 1,500. Load collapsed from 4,900 to 1,500, and there was a huge hue and cry that the distribution companies were at fault.
Fair point. Next, second point.
Within 1 month, distribution companies adequately met a load of 5,900. Where was the problem? Please tell me. The problem was in the transmission network, sub-transmission network.
Okay, so I suggest,
I would like to answer this.
one second, Rajneesh, एक second, Rajneesh, देखो, this is very nice. This is almost like a TV debate. I'm enjoying it, but I'm also getting a lot of dirty looks from people. So अगर आपने लड़ाई झगड़ा करना ही है, तो या दिल्ली में कर लो या बाहर जाके कर लो.
Please tell. I'll tell you where I suffered. I have contracted for power. I have scheduled for power, and that is going at 0 rate in the UI.
Sir, in Delhi, NDPL, TPDDL is also there.
But you have instigated
and
it.
their area was also affected by the transmission towers, but they were able to manage the load, and load were affected very less. So, but anyway, sir.
Fair enough.
That is out of
Rajneesh, I think you've made your points.
Yeah, I have made my points.
In fact, the points have been made from the floor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Where the consumer will go in this fight?
I beg your
Mr.
pardon?
Harry, let me make 2-3 points.
Yeah, Vermaji, you, please. These are part of the Q&A. Yeah.
These are by way of comments on what Ravinder said. The distribution system today has been designed to cater to the demand. The demand is touching 1,40,000 megawatt today. If all the generating stations of 2,50,000 megawatt want to generate, and if you want that access and the transmission capability should be provided, this cannot be done because who will pay the charges? This is number one issue. Number two, the private generators, merchant and others, they have also to contribute towards the total system success, in the sense that if there is a 2,000 megawatt station, the station prefers not to take long-term access for 2,000 megawatt. Majority of them are applying for a lesser capacity open access, and therefore the transmission company, the power grid or the CTU, etc., they fail to design the system to cater to them. They want to take advantage of the system, the commercial arrangements, etc., which we have. So they must cooperate, not make a noise that the transmission system is incapable. Take the case of Sterlite, that Jharsuguda station. It's a large station. When CPAT was not coming, they were taking advantage of the transmission capacity, spare capacity, which was built for CPAT actually, and their power was merrily flowing into the grid. Now, as soon as the CPAT station came, their transmission constraint was applicable to them, but they never applied for a long-term solution to this. They did not want to pay for the transmission system. Similarly, the merchant and the market people, they're not prepared to share the transmission charges. So we cannot do that. Now, similarly, issue was raised that you have to identify the users, etc. Ravinder's point is all right, that we must not insist now at this stage that you must identify the consumers in the, but the direction must be identified. You must say that I want to flow my power to the northern grid or the southern grid. But today, having taken access towards the northern grid, northern region, tomorrow you cannot say that I want to flow the power to the southern region. That will cause very, very great difficulty on the transmission builder. The last point I want to say is this Gurgaon case. Actually, the distribution company का जो दादागिरी वहाँ पर चल रहा है, मतलब I will call it दादागिरी. They have not given connections. Under what rule, regulations, etc. They have not done that, and the people are forced to pay that 16 rupees, 18 rupees, 20 rupees. The regulatory commission must insist and emphasize their authority on the distribution company to give them the connection, at least connect them to the grid. Don't give them power is different matter whether you have power or not. But violating the basics of the act is not
USO obligation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sir, Gurgaon is only an example. It is happening in Noida also. It is happening in other pockets also. So, like,
good.
All this.
So that means the generator lobby is the new dushman. Okay. Having identified that, any questions from the floor before I can start my conclusion? Yes, Mr. Nanda, go right ahead.
No, I just wanted to make some observations.
Please.
Number one is, all that we discussed about load forecast and all these things, it requires low-grade reasoning to know from where the power would be generated, and from there, which should be the load centers which will be consumed. Like right now, I can predict 2 years hence, on Republic Day, where the traffic jams in Delhi will happen. It is at that level. But the real issue is not about your panelists who are present, but it is about total aversion of PGCIL to take any risk whatsoever, though they want to be there in business.
I didn't get that. Who wants to take the aversion to the risk?
PGCIL.
PGCIL.
Yes. And I'm making it very clear, because then they could say, because what is the point of asking Finance Ministry that you fund this project? If they have the stomach for it, they will implement the project, and they should have reliance on the regulatory system to recover their money.
Absolutely correct. I think you've hit $1 million point.
No, absolutely.
And hold on. Before I lose the thought, I think this is exactly what is required. The power grid should say, we want to build this line. If the regulatory commission says no, that's fine. Otherwise, let the private sector make it, no?
No. I'll tell you one more thing. In fact, I invited PGCIL to Orissa. I said, you do this and rely on the regulatory, because in Orissa, regulatory system is far more evolved than the rest of the country. Because it has been there simply for long term, 18, 20 years. Everything was done. For 4 or 5 months it happened. Then they fell back upon state guarantee, government guarantee. I said, where does it come from? Where does it? You rely on the regulatory
mechanism
to recover your money.
Yes.
There's no, our independent directors are telling this. And they simply withdrew from the project.
Fair point. I think that's a very interesting point, because then you guys can't blame the regulatory commissions of not allowing you to build this transmission in anticipation of load and generation. Good point, sir.
Second thing,
sir.
All this thing, transmission capacity and transferability that they're talking about, is because of, I'll tell you, is 90% because of this grid failure which happened about, whatever, 2 years or 1 year back. You see, if you have a grid, there would be a grid failure. If you have a computer, there will be a hang. But the critical point in that is how long it has taken for the grid to come back to life. And if you apply any standard in India, what happened, it is absolutely top class in the world. So one should not be bothered about grid failure and this charging, your failure, my failure. Because if there is a grid, there is bound to be a failure.
I'm thinking that we should have the regulators retreat for 1 month instead of 4 days. Because you could spend so much time on transmission or on distribution. The time that we have here is so little, and I'm really want to apologize to my panelists for not being able to do justice. The point Mr. Mishra made about how do we finance it. I just have 1 or 2 provoking thoughts, if I can use a phrase, for you all to think about before we enter into our last session today, and that's on the international energy security story. That point is this: if transmission is a fraction of the cost of power, then what is this fear of paying for it? A. B, you already have a very robust regulatory mechanism in place to recover your transmission charges. So I don't understand why Power Grid should be so hesitant, if it is, to add capacity. In fact, if I was Power Grid, I would go even beyond my mandate and help the states in building the sub-transmission system, because I have the expertise. I'm coming to that, sir. I'm coming to that. Sir.
Even 5 paisa, 10 paisa increase.
Yes.
In their charges, the states were refusing to pay.
Absolutely. But that has been sorted out now, sir. They're all paying.
We have forced it.
Yeah. No, it is easy. You're the only bashing cow available. Kya karenge?
Now, any tariff order that is passed by the commission, especially in Orissa, there are 30 cases which are filed before the ATE. So what is so big deal about somebody filing cases? If you have the strength in your argument, you will win. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah, there is good. That's what he
I'm
said.
aware of that. No, Mr. Burma, I'm aware of that.
Fair enough.
At the end of the day, look at the balance sheet. Don't say that they have suffered a lot. Look at the profit and loss account and what is the reserve and surplus.
Correct. Ladies and gentlemen, are any desperate last remarks left for anyone?
Actually, I just want to...
Desperate last remarks. Okay. Mr. Mishra, go ahead.
Because Mr. Burma made the remark twice that the generators are not ready to pay. On that, actually, for the audience, there's a clarification. Here, what is happening when you're talking about short term, it's for 1 year power, whereas Mr. Burma is trying to say that the generators are not ready to pay for 25 years for that kind of thing. We are talking about, that's why Mr. Haridhal's point of view, a plug and play is very important, because the dynamicity of the contract or the duration of the contract is going to be shorter and shorter over a period of time as the evaluation is happening. So that's why we have to look from that point.
Sir, this is a very important question. How can, as Mr. Mehta said, how can I charge 20 paisa to the agriculturist and 10 rupees to the industrialist? All right. On that happy note of disagreement, yes, Dr. Deo. Last word.
I want to clarify, after 5th January 2011, it is not PGCIL which has to build the line. PGCIL first at the CTU has to identify the line and the bidding has to be done. And that bidding any private party also can do. What PGCIL requires, and they will have to recover the POC. They really want that this money will be recoverable or not. That's the only thing. So let's not blame PGCIL.
No, I understand, sir. My sympathy is also with PGCIL. I quite like the guys. But the issue is, now I'm glad you clarified it. So here it goes, guys. To those of you in the audience who don't understand, anybody can bid for a line for transmission and ask for a license and get the permission and build a transmission line. PGCIL will collect the money under the POC, which is the present regime, and give it to you. One last point which somehow has escaped attention, and I was hoping Ravinder would elaborate on it, was this general network access concept. The GNA, if it comes in, and when it comes in, will sort out all these problems about lack of planning and lack of this and lack of that, because the generator will have to tell the transmission company how much capacity he is going to export or import in the case of a captive power plant, and how much capacity is going to export or import in the case of a distribution company. I think with that happy note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for a very lively session, whether transmission is an enabler or not, but I think the time has come, and I know I'm going to sticking my neck out and Rozekar is going to chop it off and I'll definitely leave out of this room. Consumer is king. Consumer wants something, give it to him. And that's my request to the regulators and policymakers as well. Please remember, you're also a consumer in some form or the other. You're not living by candlelight. You also need electricity. And please, please, please think of what the consumer wants. The consumer wants plug and play. The consumer wants reasonably priced power. And the consumer wants all of this. Yesterday, not after 10 years, Mr. Rozekar. But thank you very much. With due respects, thank you so much to this lovely panel. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.